commend it to the House. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I call Catherine Delahunty.
Speaker, tēnā koutou katoa. I'd like to take a short call in support of the bill. I think it's excellent to see this progress being made in the House, and I'd like to commend Ngā Pōtiki and Tauranga City Council for this healing relationship that is being manifest through this piece of legislation. I think it's quite a significant piece of legislation. Most people have made very constructive and informative comments on it. I think it's an opportunity to do that when we all have consensus in the House, so that's a good thing. I'd like to reflect on the fact that the 1960s and 70s were a particularly ugly time in the history of development in this country, and Ngā Pōtiki are the victims, if you like, or the survivors of that particularly ruthless time where the treaty was pretty much treated as a nullity and the environment was treated as a dump. So it is really good to see the progress from those days. What happened in Te Tahuna o Rangataua in the Tauranga Moana area is damage, and that damage isn't easily fixable, but the social damage is being rebuilt at the moment, which I think is a very positive step in the right direction. However, when you read the history of it, when we read the history of it, Mr Speaker, and we listen to, particularly to Oroa Flavel's account, you realise the depth of experience of Ngā Pōtiki and others when they tried to stop sewage and reclaimed land being dumped in their pātaka kai. And I think one of the speakers previously said, this is a shared issue, Māori and people katoa, if you like, are all affected, it doesn't distinguish. But in a weird way, in my experience, it does. We have often built sewage plants and reclaimed land and put outfall pipes over Māori land on waihitapu, including Uripa. And in fact, in my working life prior to this House, often was involved in campaigns led by Māori with very little Pākehā support, namely in Tairāwhiti, namely in the Bay of Plenty, around issues where sewage was being dumped into the rivers and the ocean, and tangata whenua like Ngā Pōtiki were forced to take protest action and major leadership. And I think the reason that is that for people who get their food from the supermarket, then it's not so concerning if there's an outfall pipe going into the water. And if for people who do not gather their kai from the river, who do not gather their kai from the ocean on a daily basis, who do not feed manuhiri through collecting kai, they don't have a concept that it's how deeply offensive it is to other people who not only rely on that food source, as Ngā Pōtiki did in Tauranga, but also who are culturally offended at the most profound level. And having been through this journey as a mediator between Whaingaroa, Āwhina and Āwhetu and District Council, and having been through this issue in Ranganui-a-Kiwa, and now hearing the story of Ngā Pōtiki, what comes home to me as a Green is that we all have a responsibility as humans who produce waste to take responsibility for where that waste ends up. And what happened in Tauranga Moana was an overriding of voices. And so that's why today is a positive day, because for once we are all united in hearing those voices and moving forward. It's just regrettable that it's taken so long and that it's been such a difficult process. So this is not just something to tick off. This is an opportunity for healing and an opportunity for learning and thinking about what happens to sewage, because we get man on the moon, and I say man advisedly, but we still do not have systems for dealing with sewage that actually work, and we still use the ocean and waterways and wetlands as dumping grounds for sewage. And if you know anything about what tangata whenua all around the motu have called for, it's for land-based disposal. And it's really interesting, having been through a number of court cases on these issues, to realise how complex that's now become, because our waste that Ngā Pōtiki so strongly protested about because of the environment that they were trying to protect is no longer something that we can put safely anywhere because of the contamination of our food, the contamination of the environment. So this has been a deep hurt for many iwi, and I guess when I think about Tauranga Moana, which is an exceptionally fertile, beautiful waterway area, it is good to see that Tauranga City Council has stepped up to the plate in the critical issue. And the critical issue in healing is always relationship. It's always relationship. It's forming right relationship. And I'd like to echo the comments to Oroa Flavel made about the reason this bill is important. Firstly, it rights a wrong, but secondly, it focuses on a relationship which was presented to the Select Committee as a positive one for overcoming past hurts. And regrettably, in other parts of the country, you do not see councils even now being willing to take the step that Tauranga City Council has. I was present when the Gisborne District Council voted down the opportunity to have a relationship with tangata whenua. That was disgraceful. The Mayor had the casting vote and voted it down. And I also am aware that the Thames Coromandel District Council just voted down an opportunity to have a formal memorandum relationship with tangata whenua. And thank goodness that Tauranga City Council, actually in the face of a challenge that has happened since 1975, decided it was more important to build a relationship and work collectively to get a positive result than other councils that are still acting as if co-governance under Te Tiriti Waitangi is some kind of threat. Actually, it's an opportunity for healing and for harmony and for mutual education and for strengthening in terms of things like how we deal with our waste. And that is why the Green Party is very happy to support this bill, because we really want to see waste dealt with in a way that's culturally appropriate and environmentally sound. Ultimately, we've got to get waste out of water. It's a waste of water, it's a contamination issue, and it's culturally offensive. We have to find other ways of dealing with waste that are safe, because Mother Earth actually could deal with sewage, but unfortunately now sewage is full of all kinds of weird contaminants, as are we. So it's a serious issue. But I want to thank Ngā Pōtiki and the leadership of tangata whenua throughout the motu for constantly in the last 50 or so years saying no to outfalls, even when they lost, and no to the contamination of wetlands and wastelands, and upholding their cultural rights. And every single place, every single story, every single pipe, every single oxidation pond that has been dumped on a taniwha in Raglan, or piped over the Raglan golf course, or pushed into the wetlands and the reclaimed lands at Tauranga Moana, every one of those stories needs to be told and sorted. Today is a good day because we're sorting something that's overdue. So all credit to the Select Committee, all credit to Ororo, all credit to the people on the ground who have led the struggle over a long period of time. It's great to see change, and it's great to be here to be moving forward on this. And so I consider what others have dismissed as a minor bill, this is nation building. This is where we actually start to see a change in this country. This is where people start to understand each other better and to talk about something as fundamental as sewage. And if we can't get sewage right, we ain't going to get the rest of it right. So I really applaud the relationship that's being built in Tauranga, and I hope that it doesn't just apply to Te Tāhuna or Rangataua, but also to the aspirations of tangata whenua as a whole in Tauranga Moana, because they've been through enough with the RENA, and there are still issues with the RENA, and those relationships are going to be the critical things that are going to get us through these kinds of disasters, which hopefully never happen again. But the sewage disaster, which was created by bad planning and by denial of the treaty, can be healed. And that's why I'm heartened by this bill today, because if we actually look to the articles of the treaty, we will find an opportunity to build a right relationship ever since 1840. And even though it's been trampled on, there are people upholding it. And that's what this bill is about, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very delighted that the Green Party supports this from a treaty perspective and from an environmental perspective, because they're not that separate. If you listen to tangata whenua, what they're talking about is the environment being a state where people can express their cultural relationships and gather kai, and where other people too, manuhiri as well, can express an enjoyment and a food gathering relationship with the nature. Nature gave it all to us, Mr. Speaker, and what have we done to it? We have made a mess of it. But thank goodness for bills like this, where we start to build relationships which we can start with integrity to put these things right. Kia ora tātou.
Members, this debate is concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Mount Maunganui Borough Reclamation and Empowering Act Repeal Bill, second reading.
This bill is set down for committee stage next sitting day. Call on private and local order of the day number